Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not inflated. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Heauxliloquy Podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slater Jackson, and for you freaky motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, well, it's not really an episode. So, if you didn't know, the Heauxliloquy Podcast is returning for season motherfucking 3. It's been 3 seasons and I am low-key a little bit shooketh. I'm excited that I'm able to bring you all some additional content this year. Life has been a little busy. There's going to be some changes. There's going to be a lot of things coming up within this next year. But, you know, the one thing I can guarantee is that you're going to have a good time this season on the podcast. The podcast, for those who are unfamiliar, who are new to this space, the Heauxliloquy Podcast is a sex-positive podcast. Well, it's a sex podcast in general. And what we do is have real-ass conversations about human sexuality. They're educational, they're comical, there's just a good bit of information that you can gain by listening to this podcast. So if you are new to the gang, go ahead, go back to that first episode if it's still there and catch on up. If it's not there, join the Patreon. All the episodes are posted there for you to enjoy at your leisure. The podcast will be returning on March 6th, so definitely keep that date in mind. Yeah, what else? I feel like there's some other things that I'm forgetting to mention. Well, hey, one thing I can say is that there's going to be some familiar voices that you'll be hearing on the podcast this year, as well as some new ones. And like I mentioned before, there are going to be some surprises this year. Something unexpected. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So that's for you all to wait to hear. And yeah. Well, I think I've been talking enough. If you don't know about the podcast, now you do. Now, just subscribe today, join the conversation, let your friends know that this podcast exists, and y'all could talk about it in depth, what you learned, what they learned, what you feel as though myself and my guests got incorrect, and what you think we got right. Hey, it is all fair game. Again, this is just a conversation between myself, my guests, and you all. So come on, join today. And it's been such a long time since I got to say these words, and I'm excited to say them once more. But first, thank you all so much for listening to the Heauxliloquy Podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. And just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful, you are worthy of happiness and joy, you are enough and then some. You may not live up to the expectations of others, but that is okay. You are only required to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye.
The Heauxliloquy Podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, the stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Heauxliloquy Podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Heauxliloquy Podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation. Thank you for listening to the Heauxliloquy Podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.heauxliloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com. Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.